And the million faces formed together, made for elevation. And the soldier won't surrender faith. It's like a fire that never burns to embers. The voice of the unheard. Love is the answer.
I gotta speak it, believe it, that's how I feel inside.
I can't sit here quiet.
You can take my heart, you can take my breath when you're crying from my cold dead chest.
This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. Can you hear me? Are you listening? Sleeping and the shadows could be making history. Through the fire, on the water, used to be a slave, but now you are a conqueror.
They can take my heart, they can take my breath when they're crying from my cold dead chest.
This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. We're rising up, rising up, we're rising up, rising up, we're rising up. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us.
And welcome and welcome everyone to another episode of Straight Talk with Joe Vollano. It is the last weekend before Christmas. It is a great time. I love this time of year. It takes me a little while to get into the Christmas spirit sometimes, but eventually I do get there, and I am there. So Merry Christmas to all of you who will be celebrating Christmas. And of course, Hanukkah has already passed, and we already said Happy Hanukkah to all of you. We have a lot to talk about today, but let's get through the formalities first. Of course, as always, I am Joseph Vollano. I am your host, your guiding light. I am your independent voice, trying to get information out to the public as much as I can. And I'll talk about this later on in the show, as I have a little bit of an announcement that I have been struggling with over the last couple weeks on which way I was going to go. But I'll announce that at the end of the show. You're probably not going to want to miss it. It will be a little shocking, I think, to most people, especially those who have known me for a long time. But I think some changes need to be made. And I feel that in some ways that my voice may need to be used in different ways. And well, again, we'll get into this later on at the end of the show. But again, as always, I am Joe Vollano. And as always, this show always works best when you are involved. So always feel free to call in 203-679-9610, or you can email us at straighttalkjv@gmail.com. So always make sure you want to either call in or email us. I get a ton of emails, and I'll share one of them that I got later on in the show, like I said, when we talk about the last part. But we obviously have the library is going to start construction early next month or in a couple weeks. So they are moving, and they're moving over to the mall, which is, it's an odd place, but yet it also kind of makes sense. It also kind of makes sense to put it at the mall when you think about it, because there's a couple things I'm interested in when it gets there. But one, I think it's a good place because, one, the mall needs help, obviously, because all those stores are moving out. It's big enough to accommodate everything that we need. It's going to be interesting to see what they bring over there, because in the article that came out, it says that they're already storing books at Maloney, at Platt, and at Edison. So I'm interested to see what books they bring there, what equipment they bring there. Is it going to be mostly digital? Which, if it is, then it's kind of to what we've been saying all along. You don't really need those books there. You could get most stuff digitally. So it'd be interesting to see what they bring over there. Who's paying for it? I'm taking it this is all part of, I got to mention, this is part of the renovation, that they had to figure these amounts in. I know when we were talking about it earlier, I think like a year and a half ago, they were bringing trailers in that were going to be in the parking lot that was going to serve as the library. I think this is a much better fit. I think going to the mall, I think it is, and again, they're going to be the New York company. That's a pretty big store. So they'll be able to do everything they want to do there. So it'll be very interesting to see how that all works out. And I plan on going. And I hope they have their little clicker there for how many people show up, how many people use it, because we'll really get a better understanding of how many people use it. Listen, if you go to the library now, I hate to say it, it's mostly homeless people in there. I hate to say that, but it's true. They use it for a warming station. But we'll see. I want to make sure they have the counter in there. Make sure they have their little gate, and so they can make as many clicks on how many people are walking in and out of that place. Because I want to see how many people actually use it. But is it a good location for them to move the library for temporary? Yes. I'm all for it. But there is I was trying to find ways for like the last week and a half to sit there and say that that this thing's costing $13.02 million. And it came from $10 million. So I don't get we're already spending, we just approved 1.9 million. Well, they just got approved for 1.9 million. The whole point of having it at 13 million was to stop it from hitting the numbers where it would be open to public referendum. Now, everyone remembers Sonia Jelks during the meeting specifically asked about that. She specifically asked, at 13 million, will it be able to be challenged by the people during a public referendum? And they said no, because it's not, because the original rule was $10 million. But in the rules, it also adds with inflation. So it came up to, I think, just under 14 million was where we had to be. Now, if you take this 13 million, remember, we just approved during the COVID funds 1.9 million for their air conditioning, their HVAC system. That HVAC system should be in this 13.02 million. So realistically, the whole library project is costing $15 million. I'm wondering why this cannot be referendum. Now, I understand what they're going to say is a loophole because it's not one bill. It was broken down into two bills. One is the 13.02 million, and the other is a 1.9 for HVAC that was approved in a separate bill altogether. So there we go again, the city of Meriden trying to make sure there's no transparency in what's going on and don't want the people to have a voice in a vote. So these are the type of things they do. And the fact that the city manager allowed this to happen, because again, the city manager has a lot of power in the city. He could dictate, he could sit there and say, no, we need to put this all into one bill so that the people know exactly what they're paying for. But when it doesn't meet their agenda and it doesn't conform to what they want, the rules are thrown out. The rules are like, we don't have to worry about that. Who cares what the public wants to say? And I tell you what, that train of thought in this city has been bugging me, not for years, but really over the last couple of months. And I say that because it's not just Democrats doing it anymore. It's not. You know, this show we are completely at 100% independent on this show. And we will call bullshit out whenever we see it. The Board of Ed is full of shit right now. If you read the article that's on the front page of the newspaper today, they contradicted everything they had been saying for the past couple of months about transparency and what they want from the people and what they've been doing. And I got to tell you, I've been struggling really, really hard on how I want to go forward with this. But again, I don't care what party you're part of. If you're screwing the taxpayer and you're trying to be manipulative and you're trying to hide and not be transparent with how you're spending the taxpayers' money, we are going to have some serious issues. And I'm sorry. As much as I blast the city council, the Board of Ed, the more I read and the more I hear, the more pissed off I get. And people keep reminding me, oh, it's run by Republicans. Who cares? Who cares? So are you trying to tell me if all this stuff was happening under Democrats, you'd be okay with me blasting them? But because it's Republicans, it's off limits? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I don't play that game. I don't play that game. What's wrong is wrong, what's right is right. I am not beholden to any party at all. I am here for the people, for the taxpayers of this city, for the citizens of this city, to be the voice that they feel they don't have, which apparently we don't have. We don't have unless we come here together and act as one. Because we've already proven that. That works. We've already proven that works. When we come together as one, it works. But right now, our voices are not being heard. The Board of Ed should immediately stop all these programs they're trying to implement that are not necessities. And we're going to go through some of them. Because like I said, they just contradicted everything they've been telling us for the last 2 months about how this process unfolded. Where they said they wanted our voices. They wanted to hear what we had to say. Hell, they put out a survey dated September 22nd. Remember that date. September 22nd. A Parent Square survey. This survey went out to parents. We talked about it 2 weeks ago. Where you thought you were having a voice in how money was spent on the Board of Ed. Now, again, this is the same Board of Ed that comes to us every single year crying broke. Crying, we can't afford this. We can't afford that. We can't do this. We can't do that. But then they're going to go waste money on stupid crap. This is the problem with government. Government only listens when we strike back at them. When we sit there and come back at them. We need to, I tell you what, if we're not blowing up the emails of every Board of Ed member, we're not doing our jobs right now. There are programs that need to be halted right now until they are explained to the people of Meriden. And how did these projects come about? And if you follow the money, if you follow the players, which I'm going to show you, I'm going to connect the dots for you. If you follow the money, you know the bullshit that they're pulling. You know how it all comes about because everybody's in on it. Everybody's dipping their hands in. Remember when we talked about 2 months ago? We talked about what Democrats do on the council for jobs, and then what Republicans do for jobs. And remember how we talked about Democrats that are on the council? Mostly all of them work for nonprofits. Did everyone remember us talking about that? Well, you're about to see how all those nonprofits that they supposedly work for all are getting paid by the Board of Ed on this little deal. They're getting paid good, too. They're bringing home the bacon for them. And we're going to go through it. And then I would love to hear the Board of Ed sit there and explain this to me. On how all of this plays in to transparency, supposed transparency that they think they are being with the people. Because this is a slush fund. Slush fund. That's all it is. $24 million of slush fund money. To the Boys and Girls Club, to the YMCA, even to the Community Health Center, which is of course who? Mike Rohde. Boys and Girls Club, Crystal Blake, LaRue Graham. YMCA, John Benigni. Happens to be the brother of Mark Benigni. And it goes on and on, my friends. Know the players, follow the money, you'll get the truth. It is unbelievable. All while they're trying to tell you that they are being transparent. But then yet, in their own words, well, we had to do this before the school year started. So we did this ahead of time. And of course, that's what we were talking about last June. Last June, this whole array of programs and projects showed up. No one knew about them. We still have not heard from the Board of Ed where these projects came from. Who came up and who introduced these programs to be considered for funding? Baseball fields, $1.5 million for baseball fields that don't even belong to the Board of Ed. They never have. But are now going to be stolen from the youth baseball, from Little League, to supposedly be the Washington Middle School's baseball and softball field, which we already know that's not the case. But again, if you follow the players and who's involved in it, you'll understand why they're doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, this government in Meriden is out of control. All the way around. All the way around. It's completely out of control. Everybody's in bed with everybody. And for an organization like the Board of Ed, who completely always tells me every time it's not about politics, they're totally playing politics. They're totally playing politics. Because if it's not politics, it's a lot worse. And I don't even want to go there. Ethics. Come on, people. There's no such thing as ethics in the city of Meriden. There's no such thing as ethics in the city of Meriden. If there were ethics in the city of Meriden, the ethics board really meant something in the city of Meriden, Brian Daniels would have been in trouble 6-7 years ago with the whole PLA. Castro would have been in trouble a long time ago with changing of audio, with changing of the audio tapes, whether it's his involvement, just totally bypassing the mayor and going down to the New Haven for that project down there. Whether it's Sonia Jelks or the blind CC and the NAACP. Listen, Bill, there are no ethics here. It's the wild, wild west. They can do whatever they want. Because again, at the end of the day, who's going to stand up to them? Who's going to say anything? Who's going to say anything? What do they have to fear? Hell, they still don't fear us even exposing it. They don't even fear the people anymore. Because most of the people in this city are so uninformed, misinformed, or they straight up just don't want to be bothered with it. If I hear one more time, well, this is how government works, our forefathers would be rolling in their friggin' grave right now if they heard that. I always say Election Day is my Super Bowl because I think it is the greatest day in the entire world. Because our forefathers gave us the opportunity to go out to the voting booth and pick the people we want to represent us. Think about that. We are given that obligation and that duty every 2 years, really every year, to go pick the people we want to represent us. And people just don't do it. And those 10% really that came out last year, or this past election, I understand how crazy and how frustrated you must feel. Because you're just not listened to. Because the uninformed, who are being promised all these wonderful things, or the misinformed, as we seen during the Civilian Review Board, those people that came up to the microphone and started talking about the Civilian Review Board didn't even know what the frick they were talking about. They had no idea what they were talking about. And even when explained to them, granted they were 60s hippies, but it is what it is. But at least know what you're talking about. That's what we're faced with. But that's not only in our city anymore. It's in the state, it's in the federal, it's in the nation. This is what we're up against. And I don't want to get into the national stuff because, that's even worse. When we talk about corruption, that's on every side down in Washington. Like I said, I trust very few of them. I'm sorry, Linda, with the 60 hippies, but it was your time frame, that all the craziness first started. So I guess you're gonna have to own it. But you're a good one, though. You're not a hippie, though. At least I don't think so. You may be. But again, the government, the most important job is making sure that the people that they're representing understand what they're doing. And I give credit. The only one I can really give credit to is Councilman Carabetta. Councilman Carabetta is really the only one that I could give credit to that makes sure that his people, that his constituents understand what's going on. You could go to his Facebook page and he'll post what's going on and why he voted the way he did on some things or where he's thinking about voting on. He's the only one. Think about that. We have 12 council people plus the mayor. And the mayor you could go to too. The mayor I'll put in the same category as Councilman Carabetta, where he will put a lot of stuff in there. They're the only two that actually talk to their constituents. And you may not agree with them all the time. But at least they take a stance and they tell you where they're at. And then it's up to us to sit there and reach out to them if we don't agree with it. Or simply sit there and say, hey, we do agree. But right now, this Board of Ed stuff, I'm losing my friggin' mind. I'm losing my mind. And with every article that comes out, I lose my mind a little bit more. Because again, we shared this last week, the survey that they put out there. Like I said, it was dated September 22nd at 9 a.m. This went out to all parents, and it says complete by September 30th. Okay? So, and we talked about the numbers. They had 2639. Divide that by 3, and you got 900. So you had So you had about out of a student population of over 8,600, you had about 600 to 700 people actually replied to this, which is sad in itself. Me, I went back and looked at my parent score. I never friggin' got this. And I looked, and I had other people go back on that date and look to see if they got it, and other people did not get it either. So I'm still wondering, I know Ed McCarthy, I know you said you had it, and there were a couple other people that said that they had it. But I have not seen it. But that being said, it doesn't really matter, because when you find out about what's really in it, your voice never really had a chance to be heard anyways. Because we also talked about back in June 6th is when this plan was put out. And it was put out for a reason. And the assistant superintendent told us exactly why it was done in June. Let me just read it for you. So Michael Grove, the district's assistant superintendent for technology and operations, explained that the application was submitted to the state before the current school year started. Okay? So Mike Grove, the district's assistant superintendent, explained the district's application for funds was submitted to the State Department of Education before the current year started. This enabled officials to get a head start on hiring support staff. We didn't want to wait for the school year. We wanted to get the extra staff on board before school started, Grove said. So it comes out in June. They approve it in June. But then in September, so all these programs were already approved, including all the ones. I have so many papers here. Including all these. All of these that they asked for your support, that for your opinion on in September, were already submitted back in June. So why send this out in September if you already approved it in June? Is it because maybe parents were turning around saying, hey, what about us? Do we have a voice in this? Is there any transparency here? So they throw this out there in September when all the decisions have already been made. All the decisions were made in June. Coming right from the superintendent's mouth. Where did these programs originate from? One will never know. One will never know. It just blows my mind on why we do this. So, what's in this bill? You might ask. Here is the superintendent's report, which came out, as you can see, October 5th. Where really this should have been dated June 6th to the parents, but it wasn't. So it's okay. So let's look at what's going on here. So we already talked about. So a lot of this stuff makes sense. A lot of this stuff does make sense. You know, class sizes, they're trying to get 3 elementary schools and 4 high school teachers. Great. Get smaller class sizes. I love that. So most of this stuff I could get behind. The process I cannot. Family school liaison, high school job coach. I mean, these are great things. Part-time custodians, obviously you're going to do that for the extended cleaning. After-hour tutoring, who could argue with that? I know I can't. Here's where stuff I can't argue with. Outdoor learning spaces. Outdoor learning spaces, classrooms, pavilions, playground equipment, and fields. Now, the playgrounds, absolutely, I can see done. These outdoor classrooms, I think, are an absolute joke, and it's going to cost the taxpayers of the city of Meriden a ton of money. And I can just sit there and say this. When these things need to be renovated, when all these things need to be renovated and fixed, or the graffiti needs to come off, because you know the kids are going to be, I mean, look at what they do to the playgrounds. Graffiti going to be all over these things. This, I don't know if that's a blackboard or whatever they're going to have out there. Again, so when all this stuff starts to get worn out, don't come looking at the taxpayers. Don't come looking at the taxpayers to foot the bill to pay for these things. And then sit there and try to say, well, it's not the Board of Ed's. We don't own the property. The city has to pay for it. Well, if the city has to pay for it, then let the city approve money for these things, which they won't. This money should be intended, as Mr. Kaczynski said, for the needs of the students. The needs of the students are a priority. This is not a need. This is a want. An outdoor classroom is a want. It's not a need. Playground equipment is a need. The kids need to be able to vent, blow off steam, go out there and play. Yeah, exactly. Go outside and sit on the grass. You want to sit there and do an outside classroom? We will pay for mats for the kids to sit on. We'll pay for mats for the kids to go sit on. We don't need to spend this kind of money. Tents at all school pavilions installed in the spring. For what? For what? What do we need tents for at all schools? Pavilions installed in the spring. So they could use them for what? 2 months out of the year? We start school in September. November, December, January, February. It's going to be too cold. What kind of tents are these? Are they fabric tents? Are they hard tents? I mean, what are we doing here? Again, explain it to the people. Let us know. And turf, softball, and baseball fields for Washington Middle School, the Jack Berry Park. Again, you're taking it, first of all, it's not even Board of Education's property. It's not even theirs. The city owns it. The Little League uses it. And they never even knew they were taking it. Until this showed up, until a picture of it showed up at the field. They had no idea. Who came up with this project? This is what I want to know. Who came up with this project and who pushed for it? That's something Mr. Benigni, Mr. Kaczynski should be able to provide. Who came up with that project? They did have their meeting with the Parks Department. What came out of it, I have no idea. I have not heard from them. But this is $1.5 million to put in turf, softball, and baseball fields. Our high schools don't even have that. Our high schools don't even have a turf, softball, and baseball field. And we're going to give that to middle schoolers? We have plenty of other properties at the schools that they could use to do such a thing. In fact, Thomas Edison, which is closer than Jack Berry, Washington Middle School can use that field. And of course, for a baseball field, take your choice. You have the high schools, you have SEPA Field, you have all sorts of fields you could use. You don't need to spend $1.5 million on turf fields. At all. And if you look at what's going on there, who wants to use that field? The traveling softball field, softball team wants to use it. The traveling softball team wants to use that new field over at Jack Berry Park. And guess who happens to run the traveling softball team? Would be LaRue Graham, a city councilor. Very interesting. Wonder who wants to use the baseball fields. Who's going to be on the traveling baseball teams next year for the next couple of years? Maybe it's a Benigni. Wow. Wonder where, like I said, just follow the money, follow the people in charge here, follow the people that are involved in these things, and you'll understand why all of this is happening. When it comes to, where is it? I just want to grab it. I know I have it here. Oh, here we go. So obviously mental health is a huge issue. So, of course, out of all the organizations they could have used, because they're not going to bring inside, they're not going to bring people inside. They're not going to hire people because it's only a 3-year project. I get that. But then you look at who they brought in. The district collaborated with the community health center to bring therapeutic services into the school buildings. Like I said before, follow the money, follow the players. Who works and is public relations for the community health center? Mike Rohde, Councilman Mike Rohde. People, if you're not catching on here, I don't know what else to do for you. So here's the breakdown for it. So the breakdown provided by school officials shows $4.8 million targeted towards after school and summer programming. YMCA, Boys and Girls Club. YMCA, John Benigni, Mark Benigni's brother. Boys and Girls Club, LaRue Graham again, and Crystal Blake, both counselors. $8.77 million are set aside for staffing, along with $3.3 million for planning building improvements. Which I love how for years the Board of Ed has been talking about, well, we don't own the building, so we can't do anything with them. So now they're going to do the air conditioning systems, which is fine. I'm all for that. All for it. But it's like how all of a sudden their tune has changed. And to create outdoor classrooms and upgrade athletic fields account for $1.98 million. We should not be spending $1.98 million. That $1.98 million could sit there and provide funding for a lot of those other programs for another year, another 2 years. Officials plan on investing another $1.5 million in technology, which is funny. They'll spend $1.9 million for these stupid upgrade fields in the classrooms, only throw another $500,000 at technology. And this one I don't get. Another $2.581 million has been targeted towards staff professional development transportation and hiring of special consultants and other support. What the hell is that? What does that even mean? What is staff professional development transportation? Are they? I'm at a loss. Are we paying for their transportation? Are we giving them buses? What the hell does that even mean? But like I said, at the end of the day, the most compelling friggin' lines of this entire thing was Mike Grove, the assistant superintendent. It was submitted before the current year started, so they could start the hiring process. We didn't want to wait for the school year. We wanted to get extra staff on board before school started. It's crazy because that one line, that one paragraph there blew up everything we've been hearing from the Board of Ed over the last couple months. How they were going to be transparent and they were trying to get involvement of the parents and they wanted to know what we were thinking and what they wanted to see happen. But at the end of the day, it was all bullshit. They didn't care what you have to say. They are no better than what Sonia Jelks is doing and the Democrats are doing up at City Hall and City Council. They're no better. No better at all. And I really could care less that they're Republicans. I could care less. And some people sit there and ask me, how are you conflicted on that? No. No, I'm not. Not conflicted at all. Because I follow where the facts bring me. It's unfortunate where they are bringing me. And we still have yet to have answers. We haven't heard anything from the Board of Ed. We haven't heard a word from the Board of Ed. They're not going to talk to us about this. But I tell you what, there are some members of the Board of Ed that are new to the Board of Ed. And honestly, if this was brought out to my attention, I'd be the first one to sit there and go, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's pump the brakes on this. Let's pump the brakes on some of these programs that we're trying to implement, some of these wants that we want. And let's bring this to the people and see what they have to say. If no one shows up, fine. Then you move forward. But at least let the people have an opportunity to sit there and bring their voices and their opinions to the forefront. Do I think that's going to happen? No. No. I think the Board of Ed has gotten way too used to not having to answer for anything. That's just a fact. They think they're above everything else. Or as they like to say, they're above politics. Well, you're not. Because you're playing politics. Whether they want to admit it or not is something totally different. They do. They just want more and more and more. So we'll have more on that next week, because I plan on having some discussions with some members next week. What I'm really excited about, though, today, and which I think is a Christmas miracle, is now when President Biden was inaugurated, I said, wow, all right, anyone remember who I said was the most powerful person in all of Washington? I specifically mentioned one senator that was now, with Biden taking over, was the most powerful man in all of Washington. It was one senator from West Virginia. Anyone know who it is? Manchin is who it was. And I said he's the most powerful person because there is such an even split. Well, it is even. Joe Manchin, very good. Because he is the deciding vote. They need every single member of the Senate to vote with them, so they have the tiebreaker with Harris. And Joe Manchin comes from a very, very Republican state of West Virginia. And he has single-handedly put a kibosh on the $2 trillion Build Back America Act. And Democrats are losing their friggin' minds. So anyone who doesn't know what the Build Back Better Act is, it's a $2 trillion slush fund that over 10 years supports the most liberal policies ever. Oh, he'll hold out. He ain't backing down now. So they want to expanded child tax credits, healthcare programs, clean energy measures, and they want to raise tax on corporations and the wealthy. They always do. They always do. And he had made it clear, especially today when he went on the talk shows, that he is a no. He is an absolute no on this project. Why? Because the senator said the rise of inflation, the national debt, and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic helped them come to the decision on the massive social spending bill. The rate of inflation, obviously everyone sees it every day. Whether you're looking at gas prices, you're looking at groceries, inflation is through the roof. We're bordering line on like 70s, like the 1970s with Jimmy Carter. In fact, I think by the time we're all said and done, we'll probably be worse off than when Jimmy Carter was in office. But the great thing about Jimmy Carter being in office was it allowed us to get a Ronald Reagan. And I think we're going to have a Donald Trump once again in a couple of years. God willing. But it's really the Democrats' response to it today that actually caught me by surprise. Because when, instead of negotiating with him and saying, all right, because he wanted it down to 1.75. He wanted it down to 1.75 million. Paid in full over 10 years. Democrats tried every single shell game they could to try to get that down to that number. And they couldn't. And they didn't want to piss off their they don't want to piss off their AOCs and start cutting programs. I have the actual bill in front of me. Management of the National Forest System, job placement and career services. Hey, safe drinking water. Maybe Meriden could get some of that money. Can Meriden grab some of that? Because I tell you what, Meriden's water sucks. Weatherization projects, electric vehicles, which they shouldn't even have any business being involved in. Supply chain resiliency. I got an idea. Why don't you open the ports back up and just let the free market take over? Housing, rental, and homeowners assistance programs. We saw how that worked out. Worked out for everybody but the homeowners. This one I'll get. Tribal infrastructure. Why are we giving money to the tribals? I don't know. Wildfire prevention, drought relief, conservation efforts, and climate change research. That's where most of that money is going to. And wildfire prevention, that's a joke in of itself for friggin' liberals. If you look at California and all these wildfires, if they had just friggin' properly managed their forests, you wouldn't have all the timber that's sitting on the ground of the forest. They wouldn't be able to get it out of there. But of course, then you go deal with your environmentalists and forget it. You know, they hold that up in court. Next thing you know, the whole friggin' place is burning down. So that's something you should, if you don't know about, you should really go back and look at deforesting. Small business assistance and development. Trust me, I don't see any assistance, but it is what I'm sure some clean energy companies, I'm sure, see all that. Transit services and clean energy projects in low-income communities. About our busway from New Britain to Hartford. It's a friggin' joke. The bus to nowhere. Because nobody uses it. And it costs us, what, $2 billion, I think, around, when all is said and done? $2 billion for nothing. Infrastructure and administration of the Department of Veteran Affairs. Yeah, okay. You're going to give money to them. Good luck at that. There's not a single Democrat that's giving money to the VA. And here's the great stuff it wants to do. Up to 6 semesters of free community college, free childcare for anyone under the age of 6, free universal preschool services, and health benefits for states that do not expand Medicare. So basically socialism there. let's see. It also establish a methane free for petroleum and gas, natural gas facilities. You know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? Gas prices go up even more. Even more, those gas prices go up. Provide certain aliens with a path to permanent resident status. Amnesty's in this bill. Amnesty's in the bill. It's amazing who they love to reward. This one bothers me. Provide up to 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave. Now, most people would normally have to have short-term or long-term disability in order to get that. Now, would I be on board for like a week or 2 weeks? Sure, but 12 weeks, 3 months, a small business has to pay? For 3 months, a small business would have to pay not only the person out, but they're going to have to bring someone in to take their place. Small businesses can't afford that. You get 2 or 3 people out, and you might as well kiss it goodbye. So I have a huge issue with that. Restructure and increase the tax rates for certain corporations and high-income individuals. First of all, there is not a single corporation that pays taxes in this country. Because anytime you tax, and again, this is something that liberals love to do, is they love to sit there and say, oh, we need to make sure they're paying their fair share. Corporations pass those taxes on to you. It's a cost of doing business. If you increase my taxes as a business owner, you increase my taxes, I'm not going to take a loss on I'm not going to take it out of my profits. We're going to add it on to the cost of what it's going to cost you for oil or for any fuel. This methane free, when they jack up the prices of gas, I'm not taking a hit on it. If it's 25 cents per gallon that I have to pay the government for methane caps, or I'm passing that 25 cents on to you guys, along with every other business that's doing it. So anyone who thinks that corporations pay taxes is living in a fantasy world. Living in an absolute fantasy world. Require Department of Health and Human Services to negotiate maximum prices for certain brand name drugs under Medicare. Shouldn't they have been doing that all along? Shouldn't that have already been a requirement? But I like to thank Joe Manchin from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Joe, for being the voice of reason, standing with Republicans to stop this kind of nonsense. Because if it wasn't for him, this thing absolutely would have passed. So, Mr. Hanson, great question. Why shouldn't corporations pay taxes? I just explained to you why corporations shouldn't pay taxes. Because any tax you put on a corporation is going to be immediately passed on to the consumer. The end consumer pays all taxes at the end of the day. That is just a fact. And it's just easy for politicians, any politician, to sit there and say, well, we're gonna raise taxes, or we're gonna make a fee, or we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, any kind of licensing fee or registration fee. It's an easy way for the government to sit there and say, I'm not giving it to you, I'm giving it to them. And then when we raise our taxes, when we raise our prices, the government's like, well, why did you do that? Look at that. Look at these big greedy corporations. No, we're not the bad guys. We're just paying the additional fee, and you're paying the additional fees that they're giving us. No, Craig, I don't know how much more I can explain this to you. So billion-dollar corporations shouldn't pay a dime? Yes, they shouldn't pay a dime. Because again, those billion-dollar corporations, I'll tell you, what are those billion-dollar corporations doing for your 401k? What are those billion-dollar corporations doing for your pension? Think about it that way. They're supplying jobs. They're supplying economic development in the places that are around them. Their good numbers. Their good numbers are making sure that your 401k is on the way up and not the way down. Everybody wants to talk about the negatives. Nobody wants to talk about the positives that corporations do for the overall economy. And we'll leave it at that for tonight. So, obviously, it is Christmas time. So, I wish everyone, again, a very, very Merry Christmas. But we'll... I've been struggling with a couple of things over the last really last month or so, but really over the last week and a half or so on what I felt I must do moving forward to make sure that not only do I feel like, listen, I cross a lot of waves. I make a lot of waves. And that's something I'm okay with. But I feel like the more I do, it also gives people an opportunity to sit there and say, well, you're doing it for this reason, for that reason, for this. And I've been really disappointed in the political systems over the last, not even the last couple of months, for the last couple of years, really. And really, it all started with Donald Trump. And I always say, when you're doing something well, or you're doing the right thing, when both sides are coming at you. When you have Republicans and Democrats coming at you, you're doing something right. It means you really care more about the people than the parties itself. And I feel like I'm at that place where, listen, I get it from both sides. I know there are a ton of Republicans out there that hate me. Hate me for what I do. Hate me for what I say. And I'm okay with that. Which, again, makes me come to this decision that I've been struggling with for, like I said, the last couple of weeks. That I will be leaving the Republican Party. I will be moving to independent. And I feel that gives me the opportunity. Again, one, I don't think executive members of the Republican Party should have to answer for stuff I do, or for things I say. Again, I'm not beholden to any party. Parties mean absolutely nothing to me. Do I align myself as a conservative, which happens to align with a Republican? Yes. And for most people that know me, the thought of me ever not being a Republican would blow their mind. But with all the stuff I've been finding out, and again, the static I get from both sides, I'm okay. I'm at peace with the decision I've made. So come tomorrow, I will be an independent. And I will be leaving the Republican Party. So we will always do on this show what is right. Always. I will always do what I feel is in the best interest of the citizens and the taxpayers of this city, this state, and the country. I kind of understand what Donald Trump feels like sometimes. We're, again, getting it from all sides. But that's what needs to be done. Now I'm sure I'll get a couple phone calls after the show. What are you doing? Why didn't you say anything? And nobody knows about this. I've talked with very few people. But it's not about parties. This is bigger than parties. This is doing what's right on behalf of you and myself. So I'll take that into the new year. We'll continue this show as we normally do. But I'm happy with my decision, and I'll sleep better at night. So until next week, which again, it will be after Christmas, I wish every one of you a very, very Merry Christmas. And we'll talk one more time before the new year. But again, I love you guys. I love you and this city and this state and this country more than any party. I've said that before. Now I'm just acting on those beliefs. I think this is the right time to do it. Again, to most, I'm sure it's a surprise and a shock, but it is what it is. Like I said, I'm comfortable with the decision I made, and we'll move forward in a more positive way. All right, guys, until next week, I love you guys. I will talk to you next week. God bless you, and God bless this amazing city and country of ours. Love you. Good night.
And the million faces born together made for elevation. And the soldier won't surrender faith. It's like a fire that never burns to embers.